Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the 164 Forever podcast for compulsive eaters and newcomers to 12-step food recovery. Be sure to check out the description below the podcast because in there I put all sorts of useful things like our YouTube channel link, our Podbean channel link. We have a WhatsApp group where you can join and chat and ask us questions, and we try to be as helpful as we can. And there's a lot of and people post great meetings in there if you're looking for other great OA meetings. My name is Carol, and I'm a recovering compulsive eater in the Los Angeles area. Our beloved Rebecca A. is out sick. We all wish her well and a speedy recovery. And I'm here with my good friends, Paul G.
Hey, Paul G. In Huntington Beach, California, recovered compulsive overeater, and very grateful to be here.
And Rita Q.
Hi, Rita Q, recovering compulsive overeater, Irish, living in Manchester in the UK.
And Ghislain.
Hello, Ghislain, living in the UK as well, all the way from Benin, West Africa.
Awesome. So you missed it, but last podcast, Ghislain, we talked about two-way prayer. And so if you're out there and you've heard of two-way prayer and you're reluctant to try it and you've been putting it off, us too. But you can hear us talk about how we didn't really want to do it, but ultimately tried it and all got something out of it. And I don't know, I'm still doing it. Paul, are you still doing it?
Yeah, I've been enjoying it. Yeah.
This week, we're going to talk about step one. We're starting on the steps, as I've alluded to in the last several podcasts. And then in the continuing weeks, we're going to continue through all the steps. So if you're interested, please subscribe and keep coming back. So step one is the first step we take as compulsive eaters coming to 12-step recovery. And some say it's the most important step. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, step one says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. And if you're a compulsive eater, all you do is replace the word alcohol with food in the big book. And you'll most likely find that you relate to everything in the big book if you just replace the words like that to fit you. So we're powerless over food, our food addiction. Our lives have become unmanageable. We can't manage our own lives. I know that when I manage my own life, I end up close to 300 pounds and puking becomes a part-time hobby and my relationships fall apart. So I can agree with that statement. And this step and the topics in it, which are powerless and unmanageability, are so important that the first 3 chapters of the big book are devoted to them. So this is a big one. It's a really big one. And why don't we start with Paul? Paul?
Hey, thank you so much, Carol. And, what I hear when I come to OA is the pathology of all of our stories is always different, and it doesn't mean that I'm less of a compulsive overeater if my story is less compelling with yours about the way we ate food. For me, I didn't associate the unmanageability in my life with my powerlessness over food. I knew that I couldn't eat certain foods like a gentleman, but I just thought basically I'm defective. And, there's got to be a better way for me to do this. And I kept looking. I looked in self-help books. I looked in seminars. I looked in coaching. I looked in therapy. I looked in group therapy, individual therapy, art therapy. I was looking everywhere. And some of the stuff was really helpful. But my unmanageability led me to divorce, bankruptcy, being fired by my partners, living life going up and down the scale from a low of 175 to a high of 275, and just everywhere in between, but way more up than down. And I really didn't know how to live life. And I was so reactive. I didn't quite understand how come I was so reactive to things. And I tried to show you a calm face. I tried to show you I'm the kind, generous man. Underneath, I'm afraid that if I really told you what I thought, that, I could incinerate you with what I was going to tell you. about, my judgments about you. But the worst part is that, a good friend of mine said, Paul, actually was a coach. He said, Paul, when you see yourself the way we see you, my work will be done. My work was never done with him. My character defects of feeling not enough, feeling like there is not enough food out there. There's not enough of anything out there. And oh, by the way, I'm afraid you're not going to be enough for me. I'm afraid OA is not going to be enough for me. It's just this disease of needing more, wanting more, and not really knowing when more is enough. So that's kind of the short answer of what my step one, why I'm here.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Rita?
Hey,
lay that
Rita,
step one magic on us.
recovering compulsive overeater. Yeah, similar story. I ate all my life from the very beginning. I didn't think I was powerless over food. I just thought I was greedy and that I liked to eat. I genuinely did not understand that till I came into OA and I heard my story in a mirror image in people who were thin and people who were big and people who were anorexic and bulimic. It was all the same obsession. It was all the phenomenon of craving, the allergy of the body that we talk about, which when you first come in seems really, really foreign and not understandable at all. And for me, the doctor's opinion to page 43 in the AA Big Book is step one. And there's so much in there that now I fully understand. I am powerless over food, but I am not helpless. So to help myself, I have got to work the steps. And I have got to trust my life to higher power. Step one for me is the only step that I have to do with 100% conviction. It's the only one that has to be done with perfection. Because if I allow a chink of light of the disease to get into my mind and tell me that I can eat like a lady, I know I'm screwed because I can't. I really can't. I didn't want to eat like normal people. I always say, like, I hear people say a lot, I want to eat like a normal person. I didn't. I wanted to eat what I wanted, when I wanted, and how much I wanted. And I didn't care about the consequences. But now it doesn't work. It just, food, the steps will do for you what food does without all the awful consequences. And, I find for me that there's a quote in the Big Book that really is one of my favorite quotes. It says, men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. So the effect that was produced by food worked for me. It says the sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. And that was me. My eating seemed normal. It was all I knew. I couldn't understand how people could take just one sweet out of the box. Like the big celebration boxes you get at Christmas, people would just eat one of them. I'd be looking at them like they were crazy. Or people would take out a chocolate bar that had 2 sticks in it and they'd eat one. And I'd be like, what's wrong with you? And then it goes on to say in that same quote, and the phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over unless the person can experience an entire psychic change. There's very little hope of his recovery. And that is the first mention of you need a higher power. It doesn't matter what that looks like, but you can't do it. And I know I can't do it. I got up to 380 pounds. There was no question that I couldn't do it. So, that I could do this. So the very last paragraph in more about alcoholism, which is the very end of step one, it says, once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink, except in a few rare cases. And then it goes on to say his defense must come from a higher power. And just quick, I'll say the unmanageability part on paper wasn't true, in the sense that I had a house, a happy marriage, a really good job, comfortable, but my emotions were off the scale. I went from not to crazy, incoherent, angry, resentful, and fearful within seconds over the simplest of things. And that's not my truth today. And that's not what I do today, because I don't have to do that anymore. And I'm not pushing my feelings down with food. So step one really is the foundation, and it's all about the step one experience. For me, I've got to get this part right before I can start making my way through the other steps. I'll leave it there.
Great. Thanks, Rita. Ghislain.
Hey,
how are you?
Good. Thank you. Step one, I think what jumped at me is the spiritual principle of step one, which is honesty. And when I was in the food, that is one notion that I never got. Like, I didn't know what was honesty. I couldn't be honest to save my life. And this was not just about food, right? With the food, yeah, I'm not honest. I'll steal anyone's food. I'm that ill. But it's honesty in every part of my life. I just couldn't be honest for some reason, you know, not saying what is was always the easiest thing to do, the most comfortable thing to do. And I've lived in that. But what really brought home my powerlessness for me is when I got into the room, I heard said many times, and I've read it in literature, that I have got a disease. I am a sick person. And that really changed things for me. That allowed me to find a way to be gentle with myself. Because before then, every diet I have failed, I had believed that I have truly failed because I was useless. I couldn't do anything. So clearly I'm always gonna be a failure. But thinking that, you know, I'm not well. I'm a sick person. I have a disease and I don't have control over it. I can't do anything about it. It is a disease. And that really changed things for me. And obviously, reading the literature, understanding the allergy of the body, the twist of the mind, triggering that allergy. And the thing is, even the more I stay, the more teachable I become, the more grounded step one gets for me. Like it makes sense on a daily basis. It really sinks in every single time I get into a meeting and hear something that hit that home for me. Talking about unmanageability, I guess the most unmanageable I became was close, you know, having suicidal thoughts in the food because I just couldn't cope anymore. And that's how unmanageable it got. And alongside that, I was just a factory of resentment. And like, I wouldn't show you, but God, I'm hating you. I can't, and that uncontrollable need to control everything was just there, constant. But yeah, I am powerless, and my life has become unmanageable because of my food addiction. And that's the baseline. That is step one. And I have to get that right in and understand that, you know, I've tried everything. Before OA, I have tried. God knows I've tried and I have failed. So I don't have the power. I don't have yeah, I'm powerless. And that is why I need OA.
Yeah,
Thank
you. Beautiful, beautiful. I was reading the 12 and 12 a little earlier, which I know is written. So the AA Big Book is 1939, and then the 12 and 12 is 1953. So it's so many years later, you know, and people were recovering for years just using the Big Book. And step one in the 12 and 12, it's so, I don't know, it's just dark, you know, who cares to admit complete defeat? You know, it's very, you know, talking about humiliation and despair and stuff like that. And I guess for me, I just found it to be like a relief. Like I didn't feel all, you know what I mean? Like I didn't feel a lot of the stuff that I see in this, you know, the devastating weakness and all its consequences. And all of that is true, right? I mean, it is super humiliating to be 300 pounds, to be And I live in Los Angeles. So, you know, every time I would walk into a room, I would glance around and be like, yep, fattest person in the room. Got it. Okay. No problem. By a long shot, not just like a little fatter. And also, I still to this day congregate where the fat people are, because those are my peeps, right? I still want to go hang out with the fat people at a party or whatever. But I just found step one in realizing this stuff to be like, oh my gosh, okay. So I have an allergy body and an obsession of the mind, which I get. Like, yes, of course I have an obsession of the mind. I go to bed thinking about like myself and what I'm going to eat. And like you said too, Ghislain, like a friggin' resentment factory, like the Cheesecake Factory, resentment factory. Like I could, and you know, like really, I just thinking about everyone who did me wrong all the time, and then just waking up and eating. I wonder why you're waking up and eating when all you're doing is focusing on everyone who's wronged you your entire life, all day long. But it also talks about in the 12 and 12 that, you know, the ground has come up now. You don't have to be 500 or 600 or 700 pounds. You can realize there's a lot of people in these rooms who aren't that much overweight. Like I always go, what? Your top weight is like 20, 30 pounds overweight. Get out of here. Like I just like, yeah, like you're not even trying. Just try a little harder, man, like I did. But the great news is that it's really, you can realize, especially now that 12-step programs are everywhere, almost everywhere, and now they really are because of Zoom, that you don't have to go through those final years that a lot of people have to go through of humiliation, or that final 100 pounds. Like I just remembered saying like, I'll never be 200 pounds. I'll never be 220, never be 250. And then at like 280, I was like, not getting on the scale again, not going to get on the scale again until I know I'm actually smaller. So who knows exactly what my top weight was, but I know for a fact that there is no limit to my top weight. I'll tell you that right now. And anytime I declare a top weight, that's basically a goal that my ego sets as the next weight goal to hit. And so, you know, I came in and I wasn't even at my top weight when I came in, but food, you've heard me say it, had kicked my ass. I know it sounds stupid. Food had kicked my ass. I was just crying every day. And I called a friend and I just said, I feel so stupid, but I can't stop eating. I can't stop eating. I just can't stop eating. I can't stop eating. Like I could not stop eating. And then, you know, I'd often puke, not to lose weight, just so I could eat more food, not even like as a dietary measure, just to make room, because there was still food in the cabinet. And until everything was gone, I had a job to do. And if puking meant getting more in, then fine, because it was really just this mindless activity of shoveling, not even chewing, not even swallowing. So, you know, I know people's step one experiences can vary, but I do see a lot of tears when people come in, you know, and I know I did a lot of crying. I cried through many meetings and many shares, like just crying and crying and crying. And a lot of people say that's a great place to be, but also if you're not crying, that's okay too. Like, you know, sometimes you just know. So I don't know who else has something to add on that.
I was just thinking about the, you know, it says in the very last line of the 12 and 12, AA 12 and just 12, it says, under the lash of alcoholism, we are driven to AA, and then we discover the fatal nature of our situation. But it's then and only then do we become as open-minded to conviction and as willing to listen as only the dying can be. And it's kind of like, most people don't come in because they have had an accident, as I always say, or because they're like, oh, I need to lose a baby weight. Most people come in because that white noise, that mental twist that Ghislain mentioned, I think it's important that we talk about the phenomenon of craving and the mental twist, because you don't understand that until you come into a room and start learning. That mental twist is when you are told you can, you know, you'll do it this time, you'll just have one, it'll be okay. Just eat that little piece of cake, that's all you're going to have. And before you know it, the cake is gone, half the cupboards are gone, you know, you're either throwing it up or you're just so sick you can't sleep. And the phenomenon of, that's the phenomenon of craving. That one biscuit leads, you know, that, as Kim G yourself said, and I think somebody else had said, you know, that, you know, the first bite asks the second requires the third demands the fourth, and then you're off to the races. And I think
Yeah.
that's something you've got to lock into your head really well at the beginning and recognize that's the allergy of the body and stuff. Because for me, the alcoholic foods were very, very important. I know they're different for everybody, and I don't want to start saying it's this, and this. I know for me, for example, I can't eat sugar. It is like crack cocaine for me. Once I taste it and take it into my body, I could probably get away with it once or twice, but the white noise starts again, and that mental twist will start telling me that I can manage it like I did the last time and got up to 380 pounds. And, you know, that's the sad fact of it. And that's why we've got to get this 100% correct. And I think it's, you know, the food goes down in step one, but I don't really think it can go past step one. You know, I don't think the eating the way we did can go past this, because you can't hear anything when you're in the food. You just can't. You can't be touched, because all you can hear is food thoughts, isn't it? You know, do you know what I mean?
It's like an alcoholic still
open.
drinking. Right. Yeah. Like they say, like when you go into AA, they don't say, all right, start working those steps and you're going to want to stop drinking at some point. They don't tell you it's okay to, when you drink in AA, you got to go back to the powerless part. And that's kind of, you know, that's just the truth, is that you're not going to be able, and first of all, like it even says in the 12 and 12, you're not going to want to swallow this program if you're swallowing your trigger foods.
Both Carol and Rita made me think of that line in the big book that talked about, I think it mentioned entire abstinence. Like, you know, I even at the beginning of my program, I still thought I could, you know, I could manage by just eating. I want to eat everything, but, you know, just manage it. That was my initial thought. And I white knuckled it for a bit. Thank God I discovered the big book and got into it. I understood what. And Rita, you said something as well about, you know, that powerlessness and that twist and allergy. I remember right before I got into the room on the 18th of April, that every night before that, I'll cry myself to bed because I have done it again with the food, and promise myself tomorrow was gonna be the day. And I wouldn't even get to tomorrow. I'll get up in the middle of the night and go get some starch I've hidden somewhere. If that's not powerlessness, I don't know what is. So
I think it's important to know that, you know, it says there's one quote that always haunts me in the big book. It's in Window of Opportunity, which is a story I love, and it says, one definition of a bottom is a point when the last thing you lost or the next thing you're about to lose is more important to you than the booze, than the food. That point is different for everyone, and some of us die before we get there. It's really important. This disease is fatal. And I think a lot of people just think, oh, I just ate too much, isn't it funny, kind of thing. And it's like, no, I was on a one-way suicide mission, you know, and my poor friends and family were watching that, as I'm sure everybody's here, where, you know, our lives were falling apart in the sense that the self-hatred part of it, you know. And I think it's a lot of people come into the rooms and don't, and sometimes they're not done with the food. You know, I had a really bad relapse before I came back because I wasn't done. I had to do more research into the mental twist and make sure that I couldn't do it on my own, you know?
Yeah. Who is it? Lori or somebody says, or God, I can't remember, the greatest threat to the gifts of the program are the gifts of the program, right? So you start losing weight, you start feeling good. Everyone tells you your shares are on point and you're feeling like a rock star. Your feet aren't quite touching the ground. And the next thing you know, you're eating, and then, I've heard many stories about people who had years and years and years of abstinence, and then something happens and they eat something and now they can't get 90 days to save their life. You know, there's just always a reason at some point. And Kim G, again, to drop names, we'll name drop, talks about, and it really stuck with me, when you're trying to control and enjoy your eating, because if I'm controlling it, I'm not enjoying it. If I'm enjoying it, I'm not controlling it. And that is the obsession, I think, of every alcoholic, compulsive eater, heroin addict, whatever it is, whatever your addiction is, that someday you're going to be able to control your intake and enjoy it. But I don't I don't eat for enjoyment. I eat for effect, as the big book tells me. I eat for the effect of the food, for the deafening effect of the food that shuts out everything in my mind and my head for a flash, for a second. But I'll take it. I'll take it because it's better than what's going on,
And that
Yeah.
effect moves. It moves. It's not only food. I found that when I put the food down, I wanted to go on to, like, if it's okay to name them, I'm surfing on Amazon
Sure. Yeah.
for more shite I don't need, or I'm looking at stuff I could watch at Netflix because it's there. It's that blockage, isn't it? And it's that
Me too.
blockage that we will learn about in step 2 and 3, from the sunlight of the spirit. So we can't let God in. So we're like blocked.
Oh, you muted.
Sorry, I just had a call. Blocking the, God coming through. That's what we're doing. And
Yeah.
it's weird. I thought it was just the food, but there's, like,
No.
they call it the layers of the onion, don't they? And then you peel the food
Yep.
off, and then it's like you're looking for the effect everywhere, off people, off everything,
The thing that was a bit of a surprise to me was the interrelationship of this double whammy of our disease, the mental obsession and the physical allergy. And when I heard that the buildup of emotions, both positive and negative, drive me into the food, I thought that resonates with me, because that's when I would eat. I would eat anytime, but I would eat when I'm having a good time. I would eat when I was having a bad time. And I would plain eat. I mean, eat was what I did. And, I got here, after one more great idea of doing intermittent fasting. I put the weight all back on in 5 months. And I wouldn't have come back to OA for the second time if it wasn't for the fact that my adult son passed away, and then I retired, and then there was COVID. And where did I turn? I turned to my friend, the food. I turned to my friend, alcohol. I turned to my friend, sex. I turned to my friend, Netflix, and all of those things. And when I peeled off the food when I came back, then I turned to Netflix and sex. It's like I'm obsessed with one thing or the other. And as Rita said, it's a connection to my higher power that I wanted. When I came, I was desperate for that connection. I didn't know how I was going to make it if I didn't have something to hang on to. And I now see, it's like we come to these rooms and all we know is that, one, sure, food is my friend, but I think we absolutely think we're going to die, like literally going to die, unless we can get rid of the emotions that we're experiencing at any one point in time. And to me, that's our survival instincts. Everyone has those survival instincts. They are default equipment. They show up on every single one of us. But I also think our higher power gave us the opportunity to choose something else. And for me, that's choosing to work the steps. And it wasn't fun to come. It wasn't fun to say, Paul, to hear my grief counselor say, Paul, you need to come back. You need to go back to OA. And I said, no, hell no, I don't want to do that. But if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have received all the many gifts that I've received in this program. And I wouldn't be connected with these crazy people on this podcast right now, who they're ninjas in doing this work. The pain that we've experienced has created, people that love to be of service to other people. So.
Yeah, and it talks about that, doesn't it? It says, I'm glad you mentioned the intermittent fasting, because I heard somebody recently say that they were trying intuitive eating, and I was like, well, I intuitively ate my way up to 380 pounds, because I was listening to the mental twist, and it says in the big book clearly, this is quite difficult to break it down line by line for people who mightn't have ever heard it before, but frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. And that's all that. Why don't you just try this? Why don't you try eating on one leg? Why don't you just eat stuff that's green? Or why don't you eat stuff that's just red? Or, why don't you try another pain way? It's going to work this time. No, it didn't. I tried so many diets. They worked, and then they didn't. They worked. I lost the weight, and guess what? My weight went out for reinforcements, and I put twice as much on, and it was always the same. And it's because I had an addiction. It was like trying to put out a forest fire with a water pistol. That's what it was like.
Intuitive eating makes me crazy because can you imagine telling alcoholics, just try intuitive drinking, or crackheads, just try intuitive cracking, or whatever they call it? Like, come on.
Yeah. Nothing worked. I've tried it all. I've tried it all. And this is working. And for the first time, I'm learning to deal with life on life's term, because that's what's taking me into the food first. No. Accepting life on life's term, not being able to deal with the everyday emotion that everybody deals with. Just naturally, I just didn't know. I didn't have the know-how. The only way I knew was food. Or other addictive behaviors to deal with that. And now being aware of step one is teaching me how
And it tells
to do life.
Sorry.
Yeah. So it's all right. Yeah.
No, sorry, Ghislain.
Go ahead, Rita.
No, you're right. Sorry, I got overexcited. I was thinking about what Paul said about doing service as well, because it does say that in step one, doesn't it? It says, after many years of experience, we found nothing has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men and women than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. I will listen to anybody in this room and anybody who sits in a meeting who has got recovery and telling me about what's wrong with me. I will listen. I will not listen to somebody who I meet in the street saying, "Have you tried maybe drinking aloe vera before you eat a meal?" Just some cacophony of shit that people come up with that is going to work, that doesn't work, like the maple syrup diet or whatever it is, the cabbage soup,
the master cleanse, the cabbage,
the master cleanse, where you just like fart for weeks on end. I mean, it's just I was doing enough of that because I was eating enough crap anyway. But you can't. It's all bollocks, and it's like you say, it's all nothing helps. It says, and I think more about alcoholism is that nothing helps another alcoholic than another alcoholic or another compulsive overeater. Every single person in this room gets me. Everybody in the rooms get me, because we all have the same illness and we are joined by that, and it's just beautiful. It is beautiful. No matter where we go in the world now, people understand us.
If all of this is just totally foreign to you because you're new or you haven't even come to program, go to some meetings. There's like 100 and something different 12-step meetings just for food addiction. So pick the program of your choice, whatever, try them out, read the big book, replace alcohol with food, replace alcoholic with compulsive eater in your mind as you're reading. I don't want to say you will for sure relate, but I have not really met somebody who couldn't relate when they did that, and then, when you get in, you're going to want to get a sponsor and start working the steps. And there's so many podcasts, about step one or about the first 3 chapters of the big book. There's so many to find that will make it clear. The double whammy, if you go to avisionforyou.info, there are great lectures in there by Kim G, Harlan, Lori C, Ruth. There's a million on step one, just different chapters and different sections. And like hearing those things, hearing those guys walk through the big book as it relates to compulsive eating, it just literally was like fireworks going off in my head. I was like, yes, me too, yes. And it made perfect sense, because before that I was floundering. I was just floundering in this, we'll love you till you love yourself, 90 meetings, 90 days, keep coming back, it works if you work it, all the chanting, all this stuff. And I was like, I'm trying, but this isn't working. But then when you get like a straight up big book message about your addiction, it's hard to deny the truth, right? The truth. And I was reading a book and it just said personality plus truth. And I was like, that's what a sponsor is, personality and truth. Like really, you relate to different people in different ways and you try to deliver the truth. And if you're not the right voice for someone, someone else will be. So even if you have a sponsor and it's not working out, they just may not be the right voice. Try again, get another sponsor, talk to somebody, right?
Yeah, and they're not supposed to be your best friend. They're not there to be your mom, to be your, you might get a really good friendship out of it. I have a great relationship with my sponsor, but that's not the point of it. I need somebody to guide me through a book that I don't understand as well at the beginning, and somebody who is going to help me find a higher power, my higher power of my understanding,
Yeah. Does anyone have anything to add before we sign off? Any last thoughts?
What I've got from step one is I have to become teachable, and I have to let go of my old ways that didn't work. No matter the choice, no matter the conviction that my brain's gonna tell me I've been there before, I'm just painting it differently. It does not work. I need to be willing. I need to be teachable. Yeah.
Great. And on that note, let's bring it to a close and get on with our days and reach out to more newcomers, right? So, check out the description below the podcast. There's all sorts of useful links and information. And like always, we want to hear from you. We also have a Gmail address, which is 164forever@gmail.com. It's the numbers 164 and then the word forever, FOREVER. You know how to spell it, @gmail.com. And in closing, I just want to thank my guest, Rita. Thanks for jumping in for our sick friend,
No problem,
Rebecca, last minute. Ghislain, thank you so much. Always love hearing you talk.
Merci beaucoup, Ghislain.
Good to be here.
Yeah. And Paul, thank you as always.
Thank you.
If you think you are a compulsive eater and food is ruining your life, you're in the right place. Check out the links below. Reach out to one of us. We'd love to help you the best we can. And, like I always say, willingness is overrated. You may not be willing, just do it anyway. You deserve it. You deserve to feel better. You deserve to be healthy. And you know what? Whoever's listening, when you get better, you're going to help a lot of people. And that's the truth, no matter who you are. So come back and listen to our next podcast and listen to some of our previous podcasts if you like this. And for now, we're going to say good boy, au revoir, ta-ta, cheerio. What are all the adios.
I want to thank you and Rita for allowing Ghislain and me to speak today. It was very generous of you, and I'm just so grateful.